What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing. On today's episode, we are going to preview the Week 4 matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, Cowgirls, whatever you want to call them. But first, we got to briefly talk about the Browns game. I wanted to quickly just apologize for not getting a reaction video up. I promise it had nothing to do with the fact that the game was brutal, and it was painful, and it stung, and all the words. Busy week at work this week. Closeout in sales. Some of you, if you are in sales, you know the drill. So we will be back on schedule this week, but let's talk about the Browns game really quick. Let's do it by asking three questions. Number one, what went wrong? Number two, what was something good to take away from the game? And then number three, should we be concerned going forward about this team? So let's talk about what went wrong first. Do I really have to go into it, guys? The offensive line played one of the worst games that I've ever seen in my entire tenure of being a Packer fan. I started watching the Packers religiously in 2003. I have never seen a game that bad from the offensive line. Jordan should have been sacked like 7 times, probably. It was really bad just from the naked eye. But then you go to PFF grades, and remember, guys, PFF grades, I go over them. They're not perfect by any means. A lot of people don't even like PFF grades. But I'll just give you the stats here. Remember, 60 is average. The offensive line graded in the 30s and the 20s and the teens. It was absolutely brutal. Rasheed Walker graded in the teens from PFF. Let's go through the numbers. Anthony Belton, from the snaps he played, he had a 39 grade. So he was the best on the team at 39, so 20 points below average. Elton Jenkins had a 33 grade. Sean Ryan, 24. Jordan Morgan, 22, and Rasheed Walker, 15.7. I mean, again, I cannot stress enough just how horrible those numbers are. I mean, guys, it's very bad. So, again, part of it had to do with the fact that, they're dealing with a lot of injuries, right? Aaron Banks started the game. I think he was probably in a little bit of pain before that. You could just see he just wasn't moving right. And then, Zach Tom was out. So they started Anthony Belton at right, they started Jordan Morgan at right tackle, and then they ended up moving Jordan Morgan to left guard in the middle of the game when Banks went out, and then Belton came in at right tackle. And then Rasheed Walker had his little helmet malfunction, so he went out, and then Darian Kennard came in for him. It was just, guys, brutal stuff. The run blocking wasn't much better either. Josh Jacobs had almost no room to breathe the entire game. I think he had a couple of runs over 5 yards. The only run plays that actually worked were the runs side to side, the handoffs to Golden, and even those didn't really work that well. So I want to be clear before I move on. And I know I said it in the preview episode as many times as I could. This Cleveland Browns defense is very good, especially their front seven. So if you could take one thing away from this, it's just how good the Browns played in that game. I know we talk about how bad the offensive line was. Yes, but that Browns defense played out of their minds last week. Mason Graham, the 5th overall pick, he's been pretty quiet the first 2 weeks. I didn't even really talk about him too much in the preview episode, right? But he played the game of his life this week against Elton Jenkins and Sean Ryan. It was just brutal, guys. The defense gets paid too, right? We've heard that saying a million times, right? Even if one unit looks bad, if the offense on the Packers looks terrible, sometimes it's also because the other side's defense played really well, right? It might be cope, it might be dramatic, but I think this game was much more about how good the Browns were as opposed to how bad the Packers were on offense. I'll tell you this right now. This Browns team is going to win a lot more games than they have so far. I guarantee you guys, remember this is Week 4 podcast, Dallas Cowboys Preview show. I'll say it right now. This Browns loss is not going to look as bad in Week 10 as it does right now. They'll not face, in my opinion, they're not going to face a better defensive front the rest of the season than the Browns front seven. You could argue that, there's the Vikings is pretty good. The Eagles, there's a couple of good defensive lines they'll play, but nobody's better than this. Last thing I want to say about this, right? I heard it on some podcasts and some shows, and I do think this is really true. I think Mina Kimes said it, who I'm a huge fan of, by the way. LaFleur was way too worried about Myles Garrett. I know I went into the game saying, hey, one of the keys to victory in this game is that they shut down Myles Garrett. If the other guys beat us, you tip your cap. Well, yeah, but they literally put 3 people on Myles Garrett at one point. And again, they just have too good of people in addition to Myles Garrett to, leave a one-on-one against your other guys. Now, granted, you don't want Myles Garrett to wreck the game, and it wasn't him that wrecked the game, right? He actually was fairly quiet, and the other guys beat you. And like I said, if that happens, you tip your cap, and at that point, we just got to tip our cap, right? Again, this loss is not going to look as bad as it feels right now in a few weeks. What went right in the game? The defense. Oh my God, the defense. 3rd straight dominant game. Micah Parsons, our hero, he had a 90 pass rush grade in this one. Lucas Van Ness had his best game as a Packer by far. He had 6 pressures in this one, 89 grade overall. Rashawn Gary had 2 sacks. He's leading the league in sacks right now, by the way. So remember, my bold prediction was that he would get double-digit sacks, have a good season. Another prediction was Lucas Van Ness was going to break out. Those both feel pretty good right now. In addition to the 2 sacks, Gary had 4 pressures as well. Colby Wooden had a good pass rushing grade also, 78. Kingsley Enagbare had a 93 pass rush grade in this one. He only played a few snaps, but I've actually really liked what I've seen from him in the small sample size that he's played. And he has been part of that cheetah package that they run on 3rd down with Parsons, Wyatt, Gary, Lucas Van Ness. He's been coming in a little bit on those as well. So ultimately, I really, really liked what I saw from the defense. Right now, real quick, the defense had 23 pressures in this game. They're leading the league in pressures right now. Joe Flacco was in hell that entire game. The defense overall is number 1 in the league in DVOA. They're top 5 in every single category imaginable outside of turnovers. So the defense, we have to leave this game thinking, hey, they looked really good. The only other thing quick, Matthew Golden, I predicted that he'd have a breakout game in this one. He technically did, right? He broke out in the fact that he led the team in receiving. He finished with 4 catches for 52 yards. Let's talk about that long catch in the 4th quarter. Look, when that ball was completed, I jumped up and screamed because I think I might have said on the podcast I started him in my fantasy league this week, or last week now, as opposed to Marvin Harrison Jr., and it did end up working out. Matthew Golden did give me 11 points where Marvin Harrison Jr. had like 7. Anyway, on that 4th quarter catch, that could have put the game away. It could have been the game-sealing touchdown. He caught that 36-yard catch on the right sideline, and then he went out of bounds. He said in an interview this week that he felt like the defender was a bit closer to him than he actually was. You might say that that was true. And had he been, a bit more aware of the situation, I think he could have scored on that one. So I do think we'll talk a little bit about it later. I think his breakout is really, really, really close, and it started last week. I want to say really quick, too, there was a lot of debate in the pre-draft, not from me, but from a lot of people that said, I don't think Matthew Golden's actually 4.29 fast. I know Andy Herman's been on this for a while. On Pack-A-Day, I have to agree with this. When you watch his Houston tape, he looks every bit the 4.29, and in this game, he looked every bit the 4.29. There were some of those catches he made, guys, those little screens where he just juked and sped and accelerated like crazy as soon as he caught the ball. I was pretty impressed with Golden's game here. Last thing, this is going to be controversial. Some of you guys are going to maybe mute me after this, right? I actually thought Jordan played a pretty good game, all things considered. Minus the obvious awful interception at the end. When I went back and watched the game, I've watched it 3 times now. He made some really clutch throws on 3rd down. There was that throw to Wicks on 3rd down. That was kind of, ironically, it was the exact play that he threw the pick on, but they completed it in the 3rd quarter, I think it was. Absolute dime to Wicks, right at his face mask. Beautiful, beautiful throw between defenders. They were pretty good on 3rd down. The amount of hell that he was in terms of getting rushed, I thought he actually held up pretty well outside of that pick. They ran a lot of those read options where Jordan actually kept the ball, and I thought that was a really, really good wrinkle. They need to show him keeping those on those option plays more. Because remember, guys, the teams watch the tape. If Jordan's never going to keep the ball, they're not going to respect the option at all. So in this game, he read the defender accurately. The defensive end crashed in. He took the ball and went outside twice. And he actually had a couple of really fun runs in that one. Let's just talk about the pick really, really quick. yes, that was a brutal interception. Personally, look, I've heard a lot of consternation after the game about how LaFleur isn't aggressive enough and all this stuff. Look, I think that's a load of horseshit, to be honest. And if there are any kids watching, I apologize, or listening, I should say. But his aggression was why they lost that game. And I think it's real. I'm always going to lean on the side of being aggressive when you're in a game like this. He wanted to put the game away. The Packers were up 10-3, right? If they got a first down there, they could have kneeled it. The defense never would have had to come back on the field. Easy read for Jordan, theoretically. And, he throws the interception, they return it, and then obviously the Browns tie it, right? Before I continue on the pick, we have to tip the cap that he actually did go down and lead them after the pick down into field goal range before the kick was eventually blocked. But if they had punted to the Browns and not run a pass play, the Packers would have won that game, right? So I personally I didn't like that play call. I think it should have been a, play action boot for Jordan where if it was open, he threw it. If it wasn't, he just, took a knee or took a sack and then they punt, right? There is no way in hell, I believe this with my entire being, that the Browns would not have gone 80 plus yards on that last drive and won it. So the pick really was the worst possible scenario, right? On the pick, LaFleur calls it quick game. I would call it the same thing. It's basically a two-step drop, throw it. And it's one read. You just watch the safety. Does he follow the tight end up the middle or does he crash down? And Jordan should have seen that Grant Delpit was crashing down. Instead, he threw the ball, and we all know what happened. I do want to just say it was a phenomenal play by Grant Delpit. He's a really, really good safety. He played a great game in this one. He tackled well. He really did erase Tucker Kraft in this game single-handedly when you watch the All-22. So, no, I don't think Jordan – there's nothing to worry about with Jordan. I think he's going to have a huge game against Dallas. Last thing before I talk about should we be concerned, look, if the Packers played that game 100 times, they probably win 90 of them. And everything that could have gone wrong in that game at the end went wrong. And we talked about it in the preview episode, right? Here's what has to happen for the Browns to win. Basically all happened, right? The Packers made mistakes, gave them a short field, and then they lost. So after rewatch, I did think it looked a lot better than it actually felt in real time. They did move the ball consistently. It wasn't like they were dominated, is what I'm trying to say. The Browns defense knew, though, hey, if we slow the Packers down, we make them run a ton of plays on every drive, they'd eventually make a mistake, and that's what happened. So the Browns game plan was really, really good. Should we be concerned going forward? Last question. No, I shouldn't. I'll start by saying that this is still a playoff team. This is a top 3 team in the NFL, in my opinion. That has not changed. They went on the road against a really good defense with a beat-up offensive line, and they gave the game away, right? They've played 180 minutes of football so far, and they've looked bad for about 3. So let's not forget that, okay? Not at all concerned about the defense. Again, we talked about it. Another fantastic game in this one. The pass rush is lethal. I think they still have a lot of room to grow, too. That's the crazy part. I think we're really seeing about 60% of what we will see from the pass rush in this one. Love the wide receivers. I think Golden's about to break out. He might break out in this game. Stay tuned. I love the strides that Dontavian Wicks has made. Tucker Kraft looks like an all-pro. Romeo Doubs looks better than he ever has. My main concern is the offensive line and particularly their health. Going into Dallas this week, Aaron Banks, Zach Tom, and Anthony Belton are all out and they're all hurt. None of those injuries are long-term. The bye is coming after this game, and in my opinion, it couldn't have come at a better time. They need a break. I think they win this game. They go 3-1 into the bye. They're going to feel really, really good about themselves. Ultimately, when they get healthy on the offensive line, I think they'll be just fine. I think, I think most people would agree with that. Elton Jenkins has not played well. Again, I don't know exactly what I'm looking at on all 22, but that dude got absolutely abused in that last game. He's not played near the way that we thought he would for the money he's making and his switch to center. Aaron Banks has not played like a $20 million guard. Jordan Morgan, we thought he took a big step in camp. He hasn't looked good. Granted, I think it's because he's playing 400 positions, right? We need to see the offensive line play at that same level that we saw in Detroit in week 1. And I do think that we'll see it eventually, right? Think about when that game was going super well, they had a fully healthy offensive line. We haven't seen it yet. So hopefully we get done with the bye and everybody's back healthy, or at least shortly after that. I think everybody will be back after the bye. And like I said earlier, right, they don't have a lot of scary defensive lines left on the schedule. Minnesota's arguable. I actually don't think Philly is near as good as people think. They have Jalen Carter, and then they have a bunch of guys. They don't have a bunch of dudes like they did last year. Milton Williams and Josh Sweat being gone, they don't have that depth that they can just pull through. I really think that they just played the best defense they're going to play all season against the Browns. Okay, let's talk about the Cowboys game. All right, so we're going to go into through the Cowboys roster quick, talk about the players to be aware of. Spoiler alert, there are not many who concern me. Starting with Dallas's offense, Dak Prescott, that's the first place we have to start. He's their highest graded player. PFF has him graded at 90, which I believe is top 3 in the league. You see it on tape. Watch that Eagles game from week 1. Dak played insanely well in that game. He had almost no help from his receivers. CeeDee Lamb had a really good game in week 1. He's actually on my fantasy team, and that's why I lost last week, because he got hurt like the first series. RIP. Despite the fact that he played a good game, he dropped the game-sealing play in that one. There have been a lot of other drops on the team. Dak's played really, really well. He has 11 big-time throws in the season, which I believe is number 1 in the league. That's insane, right? Jordan has, I think, 7, which is great, but not Dak, right? He does have 4 turnover-worthy plays, which if you guys are not familiar with like PFF lingo, turnover-worthy plays are throws that quarterbacks make that should have been interceptions. And sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, right? So he's actually thrown 3 picks. So he's gotten a little bit risky with the ball here and there. As much as Packer fans have been groaning about Jordan Love's interceptions, Dak's thrown 3, Jordan's thrown 1. The big key in this one, CeeDee Lamb is out. He's not playing. That's the best player on that team, in my opinion, even better than Dak. Again, outside of those few drops, he's had a really good season. He's going to be, him not playing is going to neutralize Dallas's ability to fully stretch the field. They have George Pickens, right? Let's talk about him for a second. He's got a 71 grade this season. The thing about Pickens, I don't think he's a guy who can, take over a game. I think he probably has the best hands in the NFL, in my opinion. He's got a huge catch radius, right? But he doesn't get a lot of separation. He kind of wins with physicality. And, the only corner on the Packers who I'm worried about in terms of like a physical mismatch is Carrington Valentine. I think if he has to go one-on-one with Pickens in a jump ball, I think Pickens is going to win that every time. But Nate Hobbs will hold up just fine. I think Nixon will hold up just fine. I'm not super concerned about George Pickens, honestly. The other guy that's worth noting is Jake Ferguson at tight end. Former Badger, by the way. I've always been a big fan of his. He's actually a really underrated tight end. He's not your, freak athlete. He's not even as athletic as Tucker Kraft, right? But he's got some speed. He's a good route runner. If I were to pick who scares me more in this one, I think Pickens or Ferguson. I'd probably say Ferguson. The Packers have just had a tough time with tight ends, and even against the Browns, right? Their leading receivers were the tight ends. Okay. The biggest storyline going to this game is the return of Micah Parsons and, this defensive line. I think they're going to eat on the Cowboys. They're without Cooper Beebe, their center, who when he's been healthy hasn't played that well. So you can imagine their backup is even worse. They're also going to be without Tyler Booker, their rookie guard, in this one. So they do have a solid left side. I like Tyler Guyton. Guyton was a guy I actually thought the Packers were going to draft in 2024. And they ended up obviously going with Jordan Morgan because I actually don't know why they didn't pick Guyton. I think they liked Jordan Morgan in his ability to play guard. That's probably why they picked him, but I digress. And then they have Tyler Smith at left guard, and he just got paid. He's now the highest paid guard in football. The thing is as good as those guys are, they've not graded that well this season. When we look at the Cowboys offense overall, I just don't see a lot of avenues for success here. Okay. Now, again, if the Packers defense shows a completely different version of what we've seen, maybe something goes wrong in the game, sure. The only way Dallas is going to get enough traction to win this game is if Dak goes God mode, right? And again, while I doubt it will happen, he certainly has it in him. He's a really, really good quarterback. He's played like it this season. I do think the Packers have had his number, though, overall. I don't think he's beaten Green Bay a single time since he's been the starter. As far as the running game goes, Jerry Jones has been frothing at the mouth, is what I'll say, talking about how they can run on Micah Parsons. And yeah, I think Mike has heard all this, and he's going to come into this game and play like a psychopath. I can't wait. Green Bay's run defense has been good all season, minus that one drive against Judkins in that last game, right? There was that game drive where he had like 2 long runs. It was really just kind of some bad play by the safeties that, again, we talked about it. 180 minutes of football so far. There were about 2 minutes of that where the Packers defense looked a little bit rough. I'm not concerned on that at all. At running back, the Cowboys have Javonte Williams, who I really liked coming out of that draft. I believe that was 2021, I want to say. He was drafted by the Denver Broncos. And then the other running back is Miles Sanders, who I think is like 40. Just kidding. Williams is their best running back. He's got a 72 grade overall, which is above average. Miles Sanders is a 62 grade, but his rushing grade is only 52. So again, 60's average. Well, I think Dallas is probably going to try to establish the run. I don't think they're going to have much success. Like I said, I think Jerry's going to go in there. He's probably going to be in Brian Schottenheimer's ear this week. Like, we can run the ball at Micah. We can run the ball at Micah, so let's run it at Micah. Blah, 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 whatever. Good luck, Jerry. I can't wait to see how that goes for you. If you asked me a few weeks ago, before I get into the other side of the ball, who the better team was, Browns or Cowboys, I would have said the Cowboys. Going into this game, I feel the exact opposite. I think the Cowboys have very few answers on offense. There's very few paths to victory against this Packers defense, and I think the defense is going to go off in this one. Really quick, their top 5 graded players that are playing in this game, just to give you guys some idea here. Dak's at a 90. We talked about that. Kevontae Turpin, he's their running back, wide receiver, hybrid guy. He's also a phenomenal returner. He has a 73 grade this season. Javonte Williams, the running back, 72. Pickens has a 71, and then Miles Sanders has a 65. So let's flip it over to the Cowboys defense. And if you said, Ian, what's one matchup you're a little worried about? What's one area the Cowboys could do well? I think it's the Dallas interior defensive line against the Packers interior offensive line. Is it a mismatch? I wouldn't go that far, but I do think that if there's a place the Cowboys can exploit, that's where it's at. Kenny Clark and Osa Odigizua, yes, that's a real name. Those of you who aren't NFL people, he is one of the best defensive tackles in the league that nobody talks about. In the free agent episodes I did in the offseason, he was going to be a free agent at one point. The Cowboys did re-sign him. And I wanted him to go to the Packers. I was pretty convinced that if he became available, that the Packers would chase him. That being said, even though I wouldn't say afraid of those two, but got an extra eye on those two, we'll say. The Cowboys have the 32nd ranked pass defense in the NFL. There's 32 teams. They're last. So they gave up a career game to Russell Wilson 2 weeks ago, right? He threw for 450 yards, and then he got benched last week, right? We all know my feelings on Caleb Williams. He played the best game of his career last week. I mean, he's never played as well as he did last week against the Cowboys. So they're just really easy to throw on at this point. I'll give you guys a stat that will blow your mind. QBR. It's the ESPN stat that tracks quarterback play. By the way, those of you that think Jordan Love sucks, he was 5th in QBR last season, and even though he didn't even play that well, they're giving up an opponent QBR of 80, which for context would be the best QBR in the NFL right now. If 80 was a single player, better than Josh Allen, better than Pat Mahomes, better than everybody. So basically every time the Cowboys play a quarterback, that quarterback has an 80 QBR. That is absolutely crazy. Those of you who don't know that about stats or don't understand the stats that much, look, to be honest, it's bad. Really, 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 really bad. They do have some good news. Deron Bland, their former All-Pro corner, is coming off of a foot injury. He's going to play in this game. Trayvon Diggs is also hurt. He's going to play, though. Even if they're healthy, despite the fact that both those guys, Diggs and Bland, got paid, I've always felt they were a bit overrated. A few seasons ago, I think it was 2022, Trayvon Diggs made an All-Pro or something like that. But when he did, he gave up the most receiving yards in the entire league at that point. So again, he's always been a little bit overrated. Deron Bland, he's known for his ball skills, right? In 2023, he had 9 interceptions, yes, 9, and 5 touchdowns. There are some offenses that don't give 5 touchdowns in a whole season. Just kidding. But point being, guys, their cornerbacks are not great. When you get past Bland, who's going to be a little bit hurt, and Diggs, who's hurt, they have nobody. Kyer Elam, who, if you guys don't know who he is, I think he was actually drafted by the Bills. They basically threw him out of town, and they don't even have a lot of corners, by the way. The Bills' cornerbacks are not very good. He's had to play real snaps this season. He's got a 51 grade and a 49 coverage grade. So the biggest mismatch in this whole game is the Packers' receivers and tight ends against the Cowboys' secondary. Let's go back to the mismatch here, the potential mismatch. Kenny Clark and Osa, their defensive tackles, are good. Kenny Clark has had a pretty good season so far. I'd mentioned previously how good I think Osa is. On the edge, though, before I get into the defensive tackles, this is the first game that if you guys didn't know this, Jadeveon Clowney, the Cowboys did sign him, and of course Jerry was probably gassed about that. Like, he can replace Micah. My accent, it's probably bad, but I can't resist it, so I'm going to keep doing it. He actually has a lot of juice still. He had a pretty good season last year. I don't expect him to play a whole game since he missed camp, but I do think he could probably help them quite a bit. Dante Fowler Jr., the ageless wonder, he started on the other side, and he hasn't graded super well this season overall, but he does have a 72 pass rush grade. So, again, solid, but I'm not afraid of either of those guys. And then there's Donovan Ezeraku, who was their rookie. I think he was, second-round pick. Many people thought he was a first-rounder. Many people who I respect, by the way. I was not a fan of his personally. He's very, very undersized. The Packers were never going to draft him. The amount of mock drafts I saw with the Packers picking Ezeraku, I was like, nope, they're not picking him. He's way too small. He completely won with finesse and pass rush moves. It has not worked in the NFL, just say that. He's had a really tough start to the season. In 3 games, he has 4 pressures. Sam Williams is their other edge rusher. In week 1, when the Eagles and Cowboys played, I don't remember if it was a Sunday night game that was played Thursday. I can't remember the stat there, or the staff there, whoever was calling the game, but they kept talking about Sam Williams as like really underrated. I wouldn't go that far, but he's definitely better than I expected him to be when watching him. He's got 7 pressures on the season, but just a 52 grade. So ultimately, I do think the Packers tackles will be fine in this one. I don't expect the Cowboys to offer a lot of resistance. Their best pass rusher, though, is Kenny Clark. He's leading the team with 9 pressures. Osa has 7. So from a pass rushing perspective, the advantage the Cowboys have is on the interior, which, again, to talk about the offensive line for the Packers quick, Banks, Belton, and Tom, they're all out. So I expect to see an offensive line of Rasheed Walker at left tackle, Jordan Morgan at left guard, Elton Jenkins and Sean Ryan at center and right guard, and then Darian Kennard will be the right tackle. If there's any injuries in this game, any more injuries, I'm going to start getting a little bit worried. They're literally 1 injury away from Donovan Jennings, who's barely even played. He hasn't even been active yet. They just signed Brant Banks to the active roster. I'm a little nervous if they have to get that thin there. Okay, so we'll just see. Let's hope that doesn't happen. If everybody's playing, I'm not super concerned about that. Okay, how do the Packers win this game? So they're coming in. They're 7-point favorites in Dallas. So again, the home team gets 3 points automatically for being home. So if this was neutral, the Packers would probably be 10-point favorites. That feels right. Let's go over the keys on offense. Key number 1, protect Jordan, for the love of God. I'm probably going to have this on here every single week until they prove that the offensive line is just nails, right? But this week, after what we saw against the Browns, this needs to be like the Packers get-right game. Everyone on that offensive line, at some point, they've proven that they're good. Jordan Morgan showed it in preseason. All the other guys, Kennard played really, really well when he came in week 1 against Aiden Hutchinson, by the way. They practiced together the whole week, which I think will help getting him in a rhythm, right? Reality is, as good as Kenny Clark and Osa Odighizuwa are, nobody on that defensive line is near as good as the Browns. And I mean that sincerely. If Jordan has even a little bit of time to throw, even if they just play an average game, I think the wide receivers are going to dust these secondary guys for the Cowboys. Whether it's them scheming receivers open against a lot of zone, or, which we'll talk about in a minute, or if it's just guys winning one-on-ones, I think that there's going to be a lot of winning in that secondary. Okay, key number 2, establish the run game. I have to think somewhere in LaFleur is a petty MFer. He's probably heard all the Jerry talk of, we gotta go and stop the run, guys. Sorry, I'll stop with the Jerry Jones accent, but can't resist. So I think LaFleur is going to come into this game and say, okay, let's show the Cowboys that they can't stop the run even without Micah. I think he's going to try to jam it down their throats. I do think, though, again, it's hard to say, but I think the game plan is going to be to throw against the Cowboys. I think that's the obvious one. That makes me think that the Cowboys also know the Packers are going to throw, and that makes more sense for them to try to establish the run. And, again, if they bring a safety down, then the Packers are going to start to throw, do play action. If they keep the safety back there too deep, I think they're going to expect the Packers to throw. That's when Josh Jacobs will run. So I do think that there's a possibility where, Dallas thinks, they're going to throw on us, and then LaFleur just pulls the old switcheroo and starts running it the entire game. So run blocking in general this season's been really bad. The offensive line play last week was bad all around, but pass blocking wise, the first 2 weeks were pretty good. Run blocking has been a concern the entire season. Now, again, they faced 3 really good defenses that all have sold out to stop Josh Jacobs, but at some point, I think he's going to break a big one. I think it's this week. Number 3, feed the wide receivers. The Cowboys defensive coordinator is our good old boy, Matt Eberflus, the former Chicago Bears head coach. Not impressed. After 3 weeks of a ton of man coverage, we face a guy who plays basically only zone coverage. I think LaFleur is going to have a field day scheming people open in the secondary or at the wide receiver room in the secondary. I think Dobbs, Wicks, they had pretty quiet days against the Browns. I think they're going to try to feed them this week. More so. Matt's always had Eberflus's number, even with a much better defense in Chicago. I think the passing game is going to be on fire in this one. So feed the wide receivers. We'll talk about players to watch at the end, but this is a game to throw, and I think they will. Depending on how Dallas goes into it. They sell out to stop the run, which I doubt. The Packers are going to throw. If the Cowboys expect the Packers to throw, which I think is the case, they're probably going to switch and run the ball a ton and do play action. So we'll see. Keys on defense. Key number 1, pressure. So we're 3 weeks in. Packers are top 3 in the league in pressures by all metrics. They're 1 in some, 3 in others, right? They have 4 guys with 10-plus pressures. LVN, Rashawn Gary, Devontae Wyatt, and Micah Parsons. So we've seen pretty good offensive lines to this point. Detroit and Washington, their offensive lines are pretty good. The Cowboys' offensive line, playing 2 backups, it's not going to be ideal for them. I think the Packers are going to get creative. They're going to do some stunts in some games. They're going to let Micah and the boys just eat. And then on the outside, all you have to worry about is Pickens. And I think they'll just bring a safety over to help with him if he starts going. And that's going to, make it easy. It's going to make Dak hold the ball, and then, he's going to get crushed. So I don't think that the Cowboys are going to be able to win one-on-ones fast enough on the outside to give Dak enough time to throw the ball. I think they're going to try a quick game in this one. That's the only way Dak's not going to be, crushed. So, they're going to have to hold up early, but if they can hold up for 3-4 seconds, I think he's going to be on the ground majority of the time. Okay, key number 2, stop the run. So, because of Jerry Jones's ego, even if it wasn't in the game plan, if Schottenheimer said, or Eberflus said, no, we need to sell out to stop Jordan in this one, I think Jerry's going to push Schottenheimer to run the ball at Micah Parsons. Okay. To clarify, I think even if Brian Schottenheimer, his game plan was to was to pass the ball on the Packers defense, which I doubt, Jerry's probably going to be in his ear, like, run the ball at Micah Parsons. He's such an egomaniac that I think he wants to come out of this game with Dallas running the crap out of the ball, just to prove he was right. It's not going to happen. It doesn't take a genius to know Micah's a pretty good run defender. The Packers linebacking core, they're really good at stopping the run. Quay and Edgerrin Cooper have both played the run well. I personally don't think Dallas is even going to get over 50 yards in this game. And then you topple that on top of the fact that Green Bay is going to get ahead early. I don't think they're going to be able to stick with it long enough anyway. So the key all season for the Packers, get ahead by a touchdown, stop the run early, force the opposing offense into 3rd and long, pin your ears back and rush. And in this one, the Cowboys, they'll try to establish the run early. If the Packers show they can stop it on top of getting ahead early, I think they put this game away early. Key number 3, don't let one person beat you repeatedly. So if CeeDee Lamb was playing in this game, I would feel much differently about this game. I'm not saying it would make the Cowboys the favorites, but I would at least be concerned on the defensive side, stopping them. I still think the defense would have the advantage, like I said, but having Pickens and Lamb, Ferguson, they got some weapons, right? Coverage, them moving over to help with CD would have left Pickens one-on-one. I think that's a bit scary, right? They move the ball well at times against 2 good defenses, but they're going to, with Lamb being out, there's just not enough weapons to make a big difference. So I think Dallas, make them spread it out. Make it so one guy doesn't win consistently. Make it so one guy doesn't beat you. Make Dak throw the ball to 8 different guys, right? And when we see, games where the quarterback is gassed up for hitting 8 different receivers and all that, right? Yeah, that's great. But in a game like this, Dak's most targeted receiver is probably going to be the running back. So ultimately, I just, and I believe that, by the way, I think that similar to what they did to the Lions in week 1, I think Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders is going to be their, check down king in this one. So as long as Dak doesn't get into a rhythm with Pickens or Ferguson, nobody else can win consistently against the Packers in this one. I firmly believe that. Players to watch for the Packers before we get into the final prediction, Micah Parsons, obviously. That's all we're going to hear about in the entire lead up to the game is Micah's return to Dallas. And I think despite the fact that he's been really quiet this week, he is going to go into this game like a complete savage, psychopath, maniac, whatever word you want to use. I do think that Dallas is going to make damn sure that he doesn't beat them. He's still going to beat them, right? But I do think they're going to run at Micah. They're going to try to win that way. No matter what they do, Hafley's going to get creative, though, and use Micah and get him some one-on-ones. I think they're going to do some stuff up the middle where they line him up next to Edge Cooper. Those have been fun so far when they've happened. They're going to put him in the middle against the guards. They're going to do some twists and stunts to get him one-on-one. I just don't think there's any way in hell he doesn't have a big game in this one. But that brings me to the next thing. Players to watch, the entire defensive line. So, yes. Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Enagbare, and Devontae Wyatt, if he plays. I think Devontae Wyatt will play, by the way. I'm also going to add Barron Sorrell to the mix. He actually got some looks in that cheetah package last week as well. I think we're going to see his usage jump a bit as the season goes on, by the way. Barron Sorrell, the rookie. Because Dallas is going to be so focused on making sure Parsons doesn't beat them, the entire defensive line is going to get one-on-ones that entire game. And they're going to eat. They're going to absolutely eat. So we're going to go into this game. We're going to be talking about Micah Parsons. The broadcast is going to be talking about him nonstop. But I bet one of the other guys has a bigger game than him in this one. That doesn't mean he's not going to have a good game. He will. But I bet we leave this game saying, oh, there was so much talk about Micah Parsons, and then Rashawn Gary has 2 more sacks, or LVN has 3 sacks and a forced fumble or something. Just, I don't know who it's going to be, but I bet we leave the game thinking, man, what a game by, one of the other guys. So we'll see if that ends up being correct. Matthew Golden, I know we keep talking about it. Did he break out last week? He certainly had his best game last week, but I do think this is the game where we see him break out. I think he's going to get a deep ball on this one. I think he's going to take it all the way to the house. He's been really close to a couple of really big catches. He could have had both. He could be leading the league in receiving right now, ironically. If Jordan just throws the ball better, if he doesn't make that mistake last week where he goes out of bounds prematurely, I think he would be leading the league in receiving right now, which is crazy. Next guy, Elton Jenkins. It's no secret that Jenkins has not played that well this season. Him moving to center, like I said earlier, it has not worked out that well. He got completely dominated by Cleveland last week. The first 2 games, he didn't play well either. I think he's got a 58 grade from PFF. So he's been a below average player this year. And remember, him replacing Josh Myers was one of the biggest wins of the whole offseason, right? It was basically addition by subtraction. Josh Myers, though, was better last season than what we've seen from Jenkins so far this season. So that's disappointing. He admitted this week in practice that he knows he's playing like shit. Those are his words. And he needs to play better. He knows he can play better. I do think this week he shows that he will, and I think he does. This week it's crucial. Osa and Kenny Clark are the only 2 guys that I'm worried about in that defense. If Elton plays up to his capabilities, I do think that those guys will be shut down and they're not going to beat them. So lastly, Jordan Morgan and Darian Kennard. So we know Aaron Banks is out. We know Zach Tom is out. That means Kennard and Morgan, they're your two new starters on the offensive line before the bye, We've seen them both play good football at some point. Obviously, Jordan Morgan's career is much shorter than Kennard's, but I do think Green Bay's ability to reach their potential in this game, it completely is on how well the offensive line holds up. Is this a 30-point win or a 10-point win or a 3-point win? It's all going to be based off of, did they hold up against the defensive line? So let's get into the prediction. So Dallas has 3 paths to victory, and all 3 are unlikely. I think basically 2 of these 3 things needs to happen for Dallas to win the game. Number 1, Dak would have to go just God mode, play out of his mind against a really good Packers defense. He's done it before. We've seen some really good stuff from him. He's a good quarterback, right? I think he's very underrated. He's had a good start to the season. He would have to go off in this one. Number 2, Green Bay would have to not be able to block up front, either against the pass or the run. The Cowboys defense would have to, their pass rush would have to be really good in this one. And the Packers offensive line would have to play really bad, right? And I don't think they're going to play bad enough, right? And lastly, this is probably the most likely, unfortunately, Green Bay turns it over, makes a ton of mistakes, penalties, all that stuff. Things that leave Dallas with a short field. You know, if Dallas has to go a couple drives where they only need to go 30 yards instead of 70 or 80, you know, that could put the Cowboys in this game. So again, the Packers need to be turnover free. They need to make many or have many less penalties than last week. You know, those are the only ways that Dallas can win this game. There are many more ways the Packers win this game than the Cowboys. Last week, the Browns, they had to do everything, or they had basically everything had to go right for them to win that game, and it basically did, right? I just don't see a world where they don't respond in this one. I think one of the reasons why I wouldn't say they took the week off, right? But they circled this Cowboys game. They wanted to go in there and dominate, and I think they will. I think the offensive line gets back on track in this one. I think Jordan comes in and he plays really, really, really well. Makes everybody forget about last week's pick. There might be a couple of tough moments in this game for Jordan. Might take a few bad sacks, right? Might miss a few throws, but ultimately we're going to leave this game feeling really, really good about Jordan. The irony, I think we see a much improved run game. I don't think Josh Jacobs is going to break out in this one, but I bet he has like a couple of 20-yard runs in this one. And, you know, we see an ironic twist after all of Jerry's comments. So more importantly, though, I think we leave this game yet again saying this defense is scary good. This is a Super Bowl defense. I think they hold Dallas to under 13 points. My final prediction, I'll say Packers 31, Cowboys 13. I bet we leave and go into the bye week on a high, going in 3-1. Reminder, again, the Packers have their bye next week. We will do a recap episode probably on Monday or Tuesday, depending on how work goes for me. We'll also do some, we'll check on the bold predictions. We'll check on those and do a couple of fun episodes, some superlatives as well, going over the season start so far. And we'll have some fun in the bye week. We'll make the best of it. We'll talk about some games that might matter. I might just do an NFL Outlook podcast just to kind of do some filler. So I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for being patient this week. Those of you that have downloaded the podcast, keep doing that. Leave some comments, send me some questions. And I can't wait to talk about this win after Sunday. We will see you guys then. And until then, go Pack, go.